the Bourbon dynasty, and all those who flocked to their banner were on top of the world. Their empire was one which the sun never set. They were the undisputed hegemon of America, and with their several Pacific colonies, the wealth that they enjoyed was unprecedented. However, it would not last. As time passed, they became more and more decadent, and they soon faced the wrath of their peasants as the French Revolution tore their empire apart. What was supposed to be just another peasant revolt had completely expelled the dynasty from France. After Napoleon's campaign in Italy and the Imitation Revolution in Spain, the nobility fled for their lives to the colonies. While on the voyage there, they convinced themselves that it would all calm down soon, that this fleeing to the colonies was merely a vacation. However, after the war the First Coalition ended, they faced the cold, hard reality that they may never return home. Some nobility continued to sit idly and wait their return, while others quickly attempted to use what influence they had left to establish a power base in the colonies. But the colonized would not be so amicable to the nobility. The issues that plagued the mainland were exacerbated in the colonies to the colonials and indigenous alike. In an attempt to alleviate these concerns, the exiled Bourbon king had granted the viceroyalties far more autonomy. But due to the viceroyalty of New France facing significant territorial losses, the Canadians had had enough and began their independence war. Would the monarchy hold on to their colonies? Or would their colonial subjects, inspired by the revolutions in Europe, overthrow the Bourbons in America as well? Welcome to episode 2 of Project Bourbon, an alternate Napoleonic timeline. If you haven't seen episode 1, it's a good time to do so now. Check out the card just in the top right. I hope you enjoy my video. After the Bourbons had returned the British back their old colonies, British troops were sent to reoccupy them. The now majority French territories, uninformed of such transfers occurring, would resist the British garrisons. With this happening so soon after the First Coalition War ending, the British were worried of a potential re-escalation of the conflict back to the mainland. So they had attempted to keep the garrisons in their promised territory, but not weaken the Canadian movement to the point of them calling in the French Republic for help. Even if the Canadians would flip quickly to the French, the Republic did not have a suitable navy to contest the British. However, the Royal Navy couldn't be in two places at once. Any engagements that involved the Navy in America would give the French an opportunity to secure their foothold in the Mediterranean, and that's exactly what they had done. The French Republic commissioned Napoleon to invade Egypt with the hope that they would eventually be able to access the Indian Ocean and deny Britain from India's wealth. This is a move that happened in our history. However, there are some significant ramifications now with our point of divergence. With the British Navy split, and the Spanish Republic in an alliance with the French had the potential to succeed more than in our history. Due to Britain fearing overextending their navy and compromising the European theater, they would eventually sign a peace with the Canadians, allowing for Britain to retain its promised territories, but recognizing Canadian independence. This would allow for the British to prevent a French protectorate over Egypt, but put a significant strain on British-Bourbon relations. With the constant failures for the Bourbons to restore order in their colonies, and the lack of interest of Britain to continue propping up the ashes of the Bourbon Empire, it gave many anti-Bourbonic factions the courage to contest their hegemony. The United States of America was watching the events occurring so close to their lands, and many were eagerly wishing to expand their union and achieve their manifest destiny. The Americans had the Bourbons to thank for their independence, but it was clear that the relationship would not last. The Bourbons had thought they would keep a small client state neatly hugged on every corner of its empire, but the Americans had wanted to expand their influence. Many immigrants who had come to the USA had, without considering the borders, migrated into Bourbon land while still considering themselves American. These tensions would grow and grow until the Bourbon weakness was impossible not to capitalize on. The Americans had, earlier than in our history, occupied and annexed Florida. This move was a brazen act of expansionism and caused America to permanently damage their relationship with their first ally of the Bourbon Empire. However, The Americans wouldn't see it this way. Their loyalty was to liberty, and the French Republic had cast off the scourge of monarchy from their land. Therefore, the Americans would recognize the French Republic and work directly against the Bourbons. Bourbon and American forces would clash along their border, but as they did, the distant viceroyalties had sought their own independence. With the monarchy's soldiers spread thin, fighting against the Canadians in the plains and attempting to hold off further American advances, the incredibly geographically distant viceroyalties of Peru and La Plata were requested. However, seeing the writing on the wall for the Bourbons, and fearing indigenous uprisings if their armies were stationed far away, these viceroyalties would declare independence. While the viceroyalty of New Granada had more loyalty to the crown, they too would face insurgencies as revolutionaries like Simón Bolívar had begun acting against the monarchy. With no way of reasonably reaching these territories while at war with two major states in the north, the Bourbons eventually recognized Canadian independence and allowed for America to annex Florida. The Bourbons are truly facing a crisis that they could potentially never recover from. Is the Bourbon dynasty fated to die at the hands of their subjects all across the globe? The reactionary monarchies of Europe pondered the same questions, especially as the Revolutionary Wars would continue. During the First Coalition, the Portuguese monarchy had managed to hold on to their country despite the onslaught. After peace had been established, the Portuguese and Spanish armies were on high alert, waiting for an opportunity to destroy each other. Tensions between the two states eventually boiled over into what would be initially referred to as the War of the Oranges, but would soon escalate into the War of the Second Coalition. While Gibraltar would once again hold against the revolutionary forces, the Spanish army had gained enough strength to oust the Portuguese from the continent. Due to this, the Portuguese monarchy would face the same fate as the Bourbons, exiled into their colonies in America. After conquering Portugal, the Spanish proclaimed the Iberian Republic, integrating them into their nation. The United Kingdom of Portugal and Brazil would continue the resistance. However, the Portuguese and Bourbons had now shared the problem of liberal revolutions at home. With the Plata, Granada, and Peruvian independence revolts, these liberal ideals were beginning to fester in the Brazilians' lands, thanks in part to the Iberians and their covert support. The Bourbons once again offered more of their territory to a foreign power in exchange for their support, offering the Portuguese territorial concessions if they were to join in the destruction of these insurgents. The Portuguese would accept, and the South would soon face the combined forces of the Bourbons, Portuguese, and even the British. Yes, while the British had allowed Canada to gain its independence, their navy was no longer tied down, as Napoleon's Egyptian campaign ended in the same way it did in our history. Now that the British were able to participate again, they quickly seized the islands such as the Falklands from the insurgents, but would maintain an occupation of them. While this disturbed the Bourbon exiles, they were happy to have any and all help they could receive in quelling these revolutions. After the failed Egyptian campaign, Napoleon returned to France, where they were rapidly losing the war. While the Iberians had managed to neutralize Portugal, the French had been having more difficulty. The Venetians had been pushed back by the Bavarians and began marching into the client states of Italy. Realizing that the war could not be won without strong leadership, Napoleon executed a coup where he would eventually become first consul, essentially a dictator due to the strength of the position. He would soon organize a large army and facilitate the destruction of France's enemies. Just like in our history, Napoleon would cross the Alps, cutting off their enemies' supply lines and quickly destroying their army. Napoleon would handily destroy these forces, ending the Second Coalition. His authority was now unquestionable. With the French now at peace again, they had finally had the opportunity to invite the Canadians back into the Republic. Now, the French were not only the masters of Europe, but now they had a strong presence in America as well. The Canadians thought that they were going to enjoy the rule of brotherly kin from the home continent. They couldn't be more wrong. Napoleon, just like our history, proclaims himself Emperor of the French. With the support of the recently re-established papacy, he ended the revolutionary period by transforming France back into a monarchy. Despite Napoleon's gains in the New World, he understood that he would not be able to hold on to the distant colony. So, in exchange for a large sum of money, Napoleon would sell Canada to the United States. This way, he denied land from his enemies in North America, gained a large sum of money, eliminated a front line he could not support thanks to the lack of a proper navy, and it initiated yet another war between the Bourbons and the Americans. But what would Iberia think of Napoleon proclaiming himself emperor? Would they stay allies? Or would this be the beginning of the end of their alliance? How would the Bourbons react to the Pope crowning a rival monarch? Will the revolutionary republics of Peru, La Plata, and Granada succeed? All of these questions and more will be answered in Episode 3 of Project Bourbon, as the Second American Bourbon War begins. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I'm really excited to see how things develop from here, and I hope you are too. Please leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment giving feedback. I always appreciate that. Shout out to Ballin Aura University and Enzo Rafael Souza Silva for being channel members. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to have your name shouted out at the end of my video, please consider supporting the channel by getting a membership. Look both ways when you're crossing the street. Stay good, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Please subscribe. Have a good day. Bye-bye.